Hello, everyone. Welcome to the MMA Island Podcast. I'm Jack Kennedy.
And I'm Mace Martinez.
And this is your podcast for the latest in MMA. I'm Jack Kennedy. And they hit a lot harder, in my opinion, too.
Mace Martinez. He put Aldo stiff in 13 seconds before Bruce Buffer could even plant his ass in his seat.
I'm Marcos Diaz. You can't keep getting opportunities if you get hurt.
And this is the MMA Island Podcast.
So on this podcast, this is our 10th podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And we have a very stacked podcast for you today. To start, we're going to be going over our predictions for the co and main event for the upcoming fight night. We have a bunch of news to get into. And then we are having a special segment where we are giving you our top 5 knockouts of all time. And you will get to hear that on this podcast. With that, let's get into it. So let's start with the co-main event for this upcoming fight night. Obviously, the main event we'll get to in a second. Jack Hermansson versus Marvin Vettori. A lot of stuff happening there. The co-main event is Ovince St. Preux versus Jamal Hill. OSP moving back down after trying at heavyweight. The up-and-comer Jamal Hill challenging him. What do you think about this one?
Yes, I think it's a good matchup for St. Preux. For OSP, I know he's been kind of shaky lately. He's dropped 3 of the last 5. He pulled one out in September, I know, over Manifield by KO. So he's clinging to the top 15 of the light heavyweight division right now. But I feel like with the finish rate that he has, I can imagine that he's going to get in there and try to take out Hill as soon as possible. As far as Hill goes, I mean, he comes in hot. He's undefeated, 7-0. I know he's had a TKO victory, I think, on the Contender Series. And then he had a unanimous decision victory at UFC Raleigh in January. And then he ends up taking out Klidson Abreu in May in the first round, gets that finish, and then has that finish overturned because of a post-fight drug test that he failed for marijuana. So that that's not a good look for him in that aspect. But with that being said, he's a talented fighter, but I don't think at this stage in his career that he's talented enough to beat OSP. So I have St. Preux by decision.
Yeah, that's a good pick. OSP's been around for a little bit. He's been shaky, especially at this point in his career. I loved watching this the last fight, though. Getting that win, that was very good to see. Jamal Hill, not near as experienced as OSP, and obviously, like you said, but I don't know. I get this feeling OSP sometimes, if he's on, he can really fight, and he has some great jiu-jitsu. Obviously, the Von Flue choke that's his thing.
Right.
It's practically named the OSP choke now. I don't know. I just get this feeling that Jamal Hill is going to come out there. He's got a lot to prove. And if OSP is not careful, I feel like Jamal Hill might be able to work his way to a decision win. That's just kind of what I'm feeling for this fight. You never know with OSP. If he's on, he can knock people out. If he's ready to go, he can submit them. I just get this feeling that Jamal Hill might be able to outpoint his way to victory and just kind of work OSP to the point where he gets a nice decision win.
It should be a good fight.
Yes. All right, in the main event, a lot of opponent changes, but Jack Hermansson has been a steady opponent. He is facing Marvin Vettori, who is stepping in for Kevin Holland, who was stepping in for Darren Till. What are you thinking on this one?
I like Hermansson in this one. Obviously, he's a high-ranking middleweight. He's won 5 of the last 6. His only loss to Jared Cannonier in September of last year. And then other than his unanimous decision victory over Jacare, everything else for him has been TKO and submission finishes. So, obviously he has plenty of ways of getting the job done. I was really looking forward to the Gastelum fight with him because of how Kelvin performed against Adesanya and then even against Till. So I was really looking forward to that. And then he just got in there and took Gastelum out pretty quick with that heel hook. So I think, Hermansson made that look easy. For Vettori, I think it's a big step up in competition. Obviously, I think he's ranked 13th in the division, so he's taking on number 4. So quite a gap in between these two. He's on a 3-fight win streak of his own. His last win was in June by rear naked choke. Like I said, I think Hermansson takes this one. I think he gets the job done by TKO. I just think it's going to be a little bit too much for Vettori, at least right now in his career.
Yeah, I'm on the exact same page as you. For me, it's crazy to see the evolution that Jack Hermansson has had in the UFC. I never really thought much was going to be made of him, but he has really put it on since that Jared Cannonier loss. Hasn't lost since then, and just beat Kelvin Gastelum in like 30 seconds. It was crazy. And with the heel hook, his jiu-jitsu is next level. His striking is improving every fight as well. Marvin Vettori is a great fighter. He actually went the distance with Israel Adesanya. He uses that all the time whenever he's talking. But there are levels to this, and I think that both Darren Till and Kevin Holland would have done better against Jack Hermansson matchup-wise than I think Marvin Vettori does. Vettori he's a good overall fighter, but when you look at the competition that they've been facing, Jack Hermansson's on another level. He's also been prepared for this fight week. He's known he's going to fight on this fight week for a long time now, though it's different opponents. He's been ready to go. He's been in that mental state where he's ready to go. Marvin Vettori, he's been fighting on the same card, but then now you're stepping up into a main event slot. 5 rounds is a completely different thing. I think I'm taking Jack Hermansson by submission in round 2. I think he gets it down there. I don't think Marvin Vettori can really hang with him if it goes to the ground. All right, well, let's get into the news, and we have a lot to talk about today. Let's start with the most recent, Yair Rodriguez. He has been suspended for 6 months for basically avoiding taking the drug test to see if he was on something. I think they said it was like missing, you're not saying your location or something. So what are your thoughts on his suspension for 6 months?
Yeah, like you said, it's a 6-month suspension. It's retroactive to September. So he'll only be out till March of next year. And yeah, apparently there's like the fighters have to check in or USADA has to know their location at all times. And apparently there's an app on the smartphone for that. Like there's an app for everything.
That's crazy.
But I think you have to miss 3 visits within a 12-month span to receive what he received, and I guess that's what happened. So I mean, it's kind of weird. I read that USADA doesn't think that he really has anything to hide. Why he hadn't been able to be contacted. So I think that's why the punishment is what it is. But I mean, nonetheless, this guy's number 7 in the division in featherweight, and hopefully he can get this situated, get it figured out, and get back in there and start fighting, because it doesn't seem like it's too bad of a situation for him right now, but it's definitely not one you want to be in, especially with USADA. Just all kinds of things can be, even though nobody would really know what's going on besides him. It's not a good light to be in, because everyone's going to have their opinions and why he's doing this and why he's doing that and why he can't be contacted. So I just hopefully he gets it squared away pretty quickly, and then he gets back in the octagon.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my one problem with Yair Rodriguez. He's got so much talent, and he keeps improving every fight. He has one of the craziest knockouts ever against the Korean Zombie. He's a phenomenal fighter, but it's just an inactivity for me. He doesn't fight enough, and he fights, and then he's looking for a better opponent. I wanted to see, and the UFC was trying to book it multiple times. Sorry, it takes a second for me to pronounce his name. Zabit hit him versus Yair. That was going to be a great fight. I don't think it'll happen now, or maybe down the road, but I just don't think so. That would have been such a good fight with their styles and everything. That fight never really panned out. He just never really fights enough for me. So whenever I heard the news, I was a little bit surprised, because I don't think he would take performance-enhancing drugs. However, avoiding it for whatever reason, that I do believe that. So it's disappointing news, but I hope this kind of wakes him up and gets him going, like gets the fire burning, because I really want to see him fight. And if he wants to climb the ranks, he has to fight more often than he is right now.
Right, and I don't know if he's been avoiding them for how long he's been avoiding them, but he's obviously missed 3 times that they've come by. Yeah. So I don't know if all 3 of those times took place within a month or 3 months or whatever. So right. You don't really know how long he's been avoiding them or how long they haven't known where he's at. But, yeah, not a good situation to be in. I think his last one was against Jeremy Stevens, right?
Yeah.
So that was a while back. So
and that was a crazy fight too, because Jeremy Stevens was starting to win right whenever the 3rd round hit, and there was supposed to be a 5-round fight before that, but the eye poke, and that was a crazy situation.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, well, let's move on to the next piece of news. Leon Edwards, is sadly out against Chimaev. We talked about this the last podcast. It was Chimaev news. Now all of a sudden, and this is official, Leon Edwards actually had the coronavirus, and apparently it's really bad, and he is not going to be able to fight. They're looking to rebook the fight in January, I believe, of next year.
Yeah, obviously there was a mix-up. I think it got out. The news got out that somebody had tested positive. I think it was just a mix-up on who it was. Obviously now we know it was Edwards. So it's just unfortunate, man, that the entire situation, and it's unfortunate for everybody, the fighters, the promotion, the fans. But of course, it's most unfortunate for Edwards because he's positive for COVID, and that the virus, either you're asymptomatic to it and it doesn't really affect you, or it can affect you a great deal. And from what I've read and what I've heard, he is having some issues dealing with it. So you just hope he heals up quick and can get back in there. But with that being said, he's won 8 fights in a row. He's number 3 welterweight in the world, but he hadn't fought since July 2019, and that was against RDA here in Texas in San Antonio. So that's a lot of inactivity for him, a long period of inactivity, I should say. And I know when this pandemic started, he was scheduled for Woodley in March. That fight got canceled. And I think at that point, he thought that he had done enough to warrant a title shot. So when the UFC brought these other fights to him, he just kind of turned the other way. And it wasn't until they really gave him the ultimatum to like, hey, you're going to fight or we're going to take you from the rankings. Of course, he didn't want that. So he's give me a fight. And then they throw this killer at him. Chimaev, who is only 3 fights in, but been dominant every second of every fight. The strikes landed is 196-2, and that's over three fights. So what's the biggest bummer about this being canceled is that we were finally going to get to see Chimaev against an elite contender at welterweight. I know Chimaev's 15th in the welterweight division now, so he just cracked that position. But that's what I was really looking forward to, was to see if he was for real and if he could take care of Edwards, and then he'd be legit and probably be up there for a title shot here pretty quick. With that being canceled, now you got Wonder Boy and Jeff Neal, I believe, is the main event, which that's not a bad fight by any stretch of the imagination.
It's still a good card, yeah.
Right, but that fight isn't what made the card what it was. But just let's hope that they get it scheduled. I think, like you said, January or February of next year, and they both can come in healthy and get the fight on and see what's up. See if we can kind of clear up the welterweight division a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you said a lot about the fight night. It's still a great fight night. It's one of the most stacked fight nights of this year. But what that fight and the main event made that a pay-per-view level card. Right. So it's very disappointing to see that taken off. And it's also coming up very soon. That would have been so fun to see. Ultimately, though, like you said, Edwards getting it is the biggest deal, and the fact that he is struggling with it. So the best goes out to Leon Edwards. I hope he does recover from it relatively soon. I would like to see this fight on the McGregor card. I think that would be very interesting to see. That I hope they stack that fight card, because the last one wasn't. Usually they stack McGregor cards to make them the best thing ever. The Cowboy one wasn't as stacked. I really hope they load this one up. And this fight, wherever they put it on the card, would be incredible, and I'd love to see it. Basically, you said it all. Edwards, inactivity. Chimaev, complete opposite. Chimaev making a name for himself, just dominating. Edwards kind of forced himself into the situation. We're still going to hopefully get to see this played out just a little bit later. That's about it. Great. I do like that Stephen Thompson-Jeff Neal fight. I think that's a very interesting fight, and I always love to see Stephen Thompson fight. That could be the main event of any other fight night, and you'd be happy. So, fight night's okay, as long as we still get to see this fight. Whenever it happens, I'm happy.
That's a good idea that you had. I think that'd be pretty smart, actually, the UFC, to put that fight on McGregor's card, because Chimaev really don't like McGregor, so. Yeah, just to kind of get them mixed in there just a little bit together, and maybe get a press conference out of them with them two there. That'd be something special. So that's a really good idea. Maybe you send that up the ladder to Dana or something and get that worked out, because I like that a lot.
Yeah, Chimaev would definitely be calling a shot in that fight night for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so our last piece of news: Dillashaw wants a title shot, coming back from his long suspension from performance-enhancing drug use. What are you thinking about this?
If I'm Dana White, man, the simple answer is no. I don't think that a title shot is warranted right off the bat. And because it's not like Dillashaw is returning from an injury. He's serving a 2-year suspension from USADA because of EPO, because he tested positive for EPO.
Yep.
And I love TJ Dillashaw, man. I'm a big fan of his. I love watching him fight. I really enjoy the knockouts of Cody Garbrandt, probably more than anybody. But these are the facts. He was on performance-enhancing drugs. And the last time we saw Dillashaw in the octagon, he got worked by Henry Cejudo. Okay, so those are things you got to keep in mind. I think he needs to get back into 135. I think he'd be fortunate to face Corey Sandhagen or Marlon Moraes. I mean, that's number 2 and number 3 respectively in that division. So the UFC can't have these fighters coming back from drug suspensions and getting immediate title shots. Like the UFC needs to protect the reputation of the sport, the integrity of the sport, and also the reputation or whatever's left of it as far as the rankings go. But no, a title shot for him coming back, I don't think it makes any sense. As far as I'm concerned, Aljamain Sterling has done everything right, and he has won the fights that he's needed to win to get that number 1 contender spot. So before any other discussions are had about the belt at 135, I think Jan and Sterling need to fight, and Dillashaw needs to try to take care of a couple of these top 5 guys to prove that he can still beat these guys, because he's never fought Sandhagen or Moraes. So to prove that he can beat these guys while he's clean and make that statement. And when he interviewed with Okamoto too, a couple of things I didn't like that he said, that Jan beat Jose Aldo, who had 2 losses in that division. Okay, well, that's irrelevant because Aldo is still one of the greatest fighters of all time.
He showed
whether
up
he's fighting at 35, 45. Right. So I didn't like that. And then he dogs Cejudo for beating Moraes when he wasn't a champion. And he says Moraes has the cardio of, what do you call him, a French bulldog. So you just got to outlast him and you'll get the job done. And then he beat Cruz coming off the couch, ready to retire. So discrediting the victories of Jan and Cejudo, not a good look for TJ. Like, you just got popped for PEDs. Be humble, come back and do your talking in the octagon, and then that'll gain you the respect, hopefully get you the respect back that you've lost because of what you did.
You nailed that 100%. I mean, man, so a couple of things. He absolutely does not deserve a title shot. Aljamain Sterling just came out, I think he tweeted something, and he was like, it's a bit of an extreme comparison, but you don't get $1 million after coming back from jail or something. That was along the lines of what he said. You should not be able to get to fight for the royalty of the UFC, the best of the best at 135 pounds in the world in mixed martial arts. The UFC is the top. You do not get to go and earn that after you got popped for cheating. That is off the table. Aljamain Sterling, like you said perfectly, has earned his shot over and over and over again, and now he's finally getting it. He does not need to have this taken away from him at all. This does not need to happen. He needs to get the title shot 100%. TJ Dillashaw, I love what you said about Corey Sandhagen. I think that would be a great fight for him. Corey Sandhagen, the way he's been fighting right now, after just dismantling Marlon Moraes has been fighting good too. We're actually going to get to see him again on this upcoming fight, which I'm excited about. But Corey Sandhagen looks like he could be the champion at that division. I think if TJ Dillashaw really wants that, and he is a name, if he says, hey, I was the champion, yes, I was cheating, give him that fight right there. Because that is one of the most tricky fighters in the entire UFC. If TJ Dillashaw wins that, okay, now he can start talking. But you cannot start talking, just like you said, if you got popped, you're serving your extension, your suspension, you're about to come off of it. You cannot start talking trash until you get a win. You have to get a win first. If he beats him, or I like the Marlon Moraes matchup too, that would be a great striking fight. I really want to see where TJ Dillashaw is. Is he as sharp as he used to be? Has he been? I know he's very disciplined, but has he been consistently working on his game? the
Right.
UFC quickly changes, very, very quickly changes. Fighters learn new stuff. Like, literally, McGregor used that shoulder strike. Now it's one of the most used strikes in the UFC, and clinches and stuff, just like that. Has he been able to adapt that into his game? Stuff like that. Just has he been paying attention very closely to everything that's going on? And ring rust. It doesn't affect everybody. Like Dominic Cruz, he can jump in whenever and he'll be good to go. It doesn't. GSP, another example, but for a lot of fighters in the UFC, I would argue most, it takes at least a round or two to really get the feel of it again. Is TJ Dillashaw going to be like that? Because 2 years is a long suspension, and he hasn't fought since that Cejudo fight. That was when ESPN Plus was first starting. That was the first fight on ESPN Plus. It's been that long. It might take him a little while to get back into the UFC, get back into the rhythm of things. So I'm very excited to see him fight, first off, because he was the bantamweight champion. So I'm eager to see him fight, but I do not think you should be calling a shot, and he should definitely not get a title shot. Dana White should say, you're not even in the conversation for a title shot yet because of what you did. You need to get a win. So I like that Sandhagen fight. That's the matchup I would do. Yeah,
I agree. And like I said, you got to be humble. How can you sit there and discredit these victories from these other guys? Every single one of your credits, I mean, every single one of his victories. How long was he on EPO? How many victories of his are we going to discredit because of that? You know what I mean? That's number one. And as far as him getting the shot, I think it'd be bad business for the UFC. I think it'd be a bad look if they were to do that to Sterling. I think it would be a bad look if they even entertain the idea of doing it. Yeah. I think it just needs to be a solid no. The answer is no. You can fight the top 5 guys, but you're not coming back to the belt. That can't happen. I hope it doesn't. Yeah, 100%. I think Dana White needs to make that clear and obvious pretty soon. So pretty quick, yeah. Yeah. The longer they sit on it, it makes it seem like they're thinking about it, which it should not be a conversation. That's a terrible look for the sport. All right. Well, this is the fun part. Our top 5 knockouts of all time. Special little edition. A lot of stuff to talk about here. Mace, what are your top 5 knockouts of all time in UFC history or MMA history? All right. So I'm going to go 5-1. And they are all from the UFC. Yeah. So my number 5, and this is just because of the ferociousness of this knockout, is Francis Ngannou's knockout over Overeem in 2017. In what Overeem referred to as the uppercut from hell that Ngannou landed on him. The first round of their fight. And I think, for me, at least at that point, that's what really made Francis stand out. Like, this dude is scary with some serious power. Yeah. I mean, and you would think that a man named Francis couldn't be that scary and that powerful. But he almost knocked Overeem's head off of his neck. That's how hard he hit him. It was insane. So that's my number 5, just because it was such a ferocious knockout. And you know, it really, like I said, to me, it made Ngannou stand out as a force in heavyweight. For number 4, I got Masvidal knocking out Askren in 2019. The flying knee KO, the 5-second KO. Obviously, it's the fastest knockout in promotion history so far. Just the whole story with those guys, the dislike between them. You know, Askren was coming in cocky after that controversial win over Lawler, and then he goes and is like, Dana, is this the best you got? Like, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way right off the bat. Yeah. That was literally a jaw-dropping KO for me. I'll always remember seeing that, where I was, who I was with, because it was just incredible. And then he left Askren just stiff as a board inside the cage. So that's number 4 for me. Number 3, I got Weidman over Silva in 2013. I think at that time Silva was considered the GOAT, and he still is by many people. The undisputed champion at that time, middleweight champion. I like the lack of respect that he had for Weidman. I think he lacked a little bit of respect for him. Started playing around a little bit too much, and then boop, just got caught at the end of a left hook by Weidman, and that was all she wrote after that. So just the fact that the title was on the line, the title changed hands. Anderson was such a force back then and such a favorite in that fight. For Weidman to pull that off was incredible. Obviously, Weidman went too hot afterward, but that's number 3 for me. Number 2, I have Holly Holm knocking out Ronda Rousey in 2015. in Australia in front of 50,000 people.
Oh, yeah.
Just a massive card with female co-main and main events that night. So the females were on display in front of the world that night, and Holly just schooled Ronda for, what was it, a round and a half? I think that was a second round knockout. So
Yeah.
just the outclassed her, and Ronda was so dominant at the time and just taking out everybody, and Holly made her look like an amateur and then landed the perfect head kick and took her out. So that's number 2 in my opinion. And my number 1 knockout of all time is 2015 is Conor McGregor knocking out Jose Aldo. The fastest knockout in championship history. And the reason this stands out to me so much is because I think of the buildup of the fight. I think of everything that was put into it with both of these guys. I think of the world tours, Aldo pulling out of the first fight, Conor having to go through Mendez. And then you finally get these guys hooked up, and Conor calls his shot on the Embedded series. Before the fight, he's practicing the scenario in the locker room, and then he goes out and he put Aldo stiff in 13 seconds. Before Bruce Buffer could even plant his ass in his seat, Aldo was already knocked out. You know what I mean? So at that time, Aldo's 25-1. He's the only featherweight champion in the promotion's history, and that just launched Conor into superstardom, even more so than he already was at that point. That's just when things really took off for him. Obviously, after that, he got beat by Nate a couple of months later, but then he won that one back. He won the second belt. He fought Floyd. I mean, his career just took off after that moment. That, in my opinion, is the greatest knockout ever.
Yeah, man, that was spectacular. And that's where I'm going to start my list at number 5. So that was, first up, the knockout was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. And just the whole lead up, people don't realize how great Aldo was. He was basically undefeated. The only featherweight champion ever in the UFC. He was unreal. And then for Conor, he was talking so much trash throughout the whole thing and everything. He was really getting in his head, and you could tell it. And obviously Conor already had probably the biggest fan base in the UFC. That Mendez fight, everybody chanted the Olays and everything. It was amazing. But then you go in there, Conor versus Aldo, the biggest fight in UFC history, the biggest fight for Conor McGregor. If Aldo wins, he really just derails a hype train. If McGregor wins, he becomes the biggest star the company has ever seen. And if Conor doesn't win that fight, Conor is nowhere where he is today. That fight launched him everywhere. It was so amazing to see. And just to go in there, you were mentioning like the Masvidal fight. That was crazy too. I remember exactly where I was, the time where I was, everything. Whenever I saw this happen, I was speechless. I could not believe it. 13 seconds, basically the first punch he threw, knocked him out cold. It was beautiful, and it just shows the level that Conor McGregor's at. A lot of people think just one punch, it's just, it's a lucky punch. You watch that, Aldo landed and actually cut him open, but it was just that beautiful timing. He moved his head out of the way and landed the left. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and it was just shocking, and it was unreal, and the crowd's going crazy. Joe Rogan's losing his mind. It was just so amazing. It was such an amazing moment in UFC history, and that all that coming into it with the knockout. That's my number 5 spot. Sorry, that was a lot for number 5, but I just that moment as a UFC fan, that moment sits deep. Anyways, number 4, you already mentioned it. Ngannou versus Overeem. Crazy. That was just awesome, spectacular. We knew Francis Ngannou was this beast, but now he's facing the toughest competition of his career in Overeem. And he, I believe he registered, I think he's, the UFC registered him as the hardest hitting person on earth at the moment with his uppercut. And whenever he landed that, it looked like it. Overeem's head just snapped back and he just landed. And then Ngannou landed the extra punch after too. And it was just like, no, don't do that. It was crazy. Yeah. Overeem looked like he was dead. It was insane. That's number 4 for me. Number 3, we're going a bit older. Dan Henderson versus Michael Bisping, the first time they fought. Mm-hmm. So much trash talk going back into it. Dan Henderson, a lot of new fans don't know who he is, which is a shame that they, you got to know who these legends are. Dan Henderson, the Hendo bomb, boom, stepped right into it, landed on Michael Bisping clean. That's the one thing you have to look out for Dan Henderson. He landed clean. Michael Bisping went flat on the canvas, and then Dan Henderson landed an extra punch on top of it because of all the trash Michael Bisping was talking. Absolutely legendary moment. Number 2 for me, Edson Barboza versus Terry Adam. This was unreal. This knockout was unheard of. People didn't even throw the spinning wheel kick. Edson Barboza landed it, and Joe Rogan was commentating, and he was like, he's about to get knocked out. It was timed perfectly. It was crazy. He spun, it landed, and then just the reaction from the Terry Adam getting knocked out was also crazy. It just shows how much power and how fast it was. He hit him, and then he stood and then just fell back and was twitching. It was scary. And it was just lightning quick, never been done before. And also that was a fight that propelled Edson Barboza into what he is today. He basically secured his spot into one of the best 155ers just off of that one fight, fighting the best of the best of that at that point. So, and also just became a name. So that's my number 2. And my number 1 is pretty – this one is not because of just it's a name or there was a lot of riding on this fight or even that was a beautiful knockout or technical or anything. I just love the pure madness of this situation. And whenever I think about the UFC, I think about this fight right here. Scott Smith versus Pete Sell. These were the guys, you probably don't know their names, but at the Ultimate Fighter Season 4 finale, once I describe it to you, you'll know the fight. Pete Sell went in there, landed a huge liver shot on Scott Smith. Scott Smith bent over. Pete Sell ran in with a big punch, and then Scott Smith somehow got up and then landed a shot of his own, knocking Pete Sell out cold. And then the fight's over. Scott Smith somehow wins after, and then he just lays down because his liver's pretty much destroyed from that one shot. They're both just basically laying on the floor, but Scott Smith won after being almost finished. Just pure chaos and madness, and that's what I think about when I think about the UFC, and that fight right there is just another jaw-dropping moment, and I can watch that all day long. So that's my number 1 knockout of all time.
Nice. I like that. And while we're at it, I think now that you mentioned the Ultimate Fighter, you got to put Uriah Hall's knockout in there.
Oh, yes.
I can't remember who he knocked out, but Jesus.
Oh, my gosh.
I think he thought he killed that guy.
Yeah.
The worry on his face, the contact that he made with that guy's head, the way that guy fell to the canvas, very scary situation. Like, obviously, we love seeing things like that as fight fans, but that is very, very scary. But that's a knockout you have to mention. That was insane, and that put that put Uriah Hall up there as a dangerous dude, like Edson Barboza's will kick did. Just solidified them as dangerous strikers more than anything. They're a dangerous striker and they can take you out. So that was a great list. Yeah.
What was even better about that knockout and the Ultimate Fighter too is because you could hear it. The Ultimate Fighter, pretty much everybody's quiet. It's all tense and everything. He just landed that, and it was.
It's like it is now. It's like it is now with no crowd.
Yeah.
It's like the Ultimate Fighter. Yeah.
Except for it echoes in that small room and everything. Yeah. Absolutely. That was really fun. That was amazing. All right. I think that'll about do it for this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. This was our 10th ever episode. Make sure to watch on YouTube. You probably are. Listen all over the place. We are on Anchor, iTunes, Spotify, anywhere you can listen to a podcast. You can listen to us. Share it, leave a review where you can. Check us out on Instagram at MMA Island and on our website, MMAisland.net. Thank you guys so much for listening. Great podcast, Mace.
Good work, brother. Thanks.